Thanks for joining me for another edition of Grew with Portia. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. Grew with Portia targets those who are curious, eager, and hungry for new information that can aid in their personal and professional development. Malcolm X once said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." Never stop learning. Be a sponge for the rest of your life. Before I jump into my topic for today, I want to start off with a little history lesson. Thanks for joining me in the studio today, Mr. Spencer McIntyre from RSM.
Yes.
All right. So our history lesson for today is, on this day, November 20th, 1923, Garrett Morgan patented the traffic signal. He witnessed a collision between a car and a horse-drawn carriage. The Morgan traffic signal was a T-shaped pole unit that featured three positions: stop, go, and an all-directional stop position. This third position halted traffic in all directions to allow pedestrians to cross the street more safely. Morgan's hand-cranked semaphore traffic management device was in use throughout North America until all manual traffic signals were replaced by the automatic red, yellow, and green light traffic signals currently used around the world. The inventor sold the rights to his traffic signal to the General Electric Corporation for $40,000. Wow, what an invention. Could you imagine, Spencer, what our society would look like if we didn't have traffic signals?
It would be chaos on the streets, literally.
I mean, how would we even... I mean, think about the four-way intersections. I think those would be the most chaotic.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is hearing you talk about the features in the original model. So a lot of the traffic signals in some busier metropolitan areas can still do a four-way stop, but it's just the reds all the way around and it's implemented digitally. But then we also have the introduction of the yellow to slow, which is probably necessary now because vehicles are traveling at a higher speed and the deceleration takes a little bit extra time. It's kind of interesting to see the evolution there based on what we need.
Right. And when I think of the yellow traffic light, I see people zooming through the yellow. So it's like, is it really slow down or is it just hurry up and get through before the red light comes?
That's the other way of looking at it, yeah.
I thought of another thing. How would rush hour look without a traffic signal?
I feel like it'd probably be more similar to stop hour. With everyone trying to go, probably be a lot more accidents.
A lot more accidents, a lot more people just ready to pull their hair out sitting in traffic on I-90. I mean, because you figure rush hour starts at about, 4? Between 4 to 6?
That's right.
Depending on where you're coming from. Luckily for me, I've never had to deal with rush hour. I've always been very fortunate to have jobs that were either very close to my house or I got to work early enough to avoid traffic and got off work early enough to avoid rush hour.
That is always a benefit. In consulting, a lot of times we get caught by checking to see how far it is to the client the night before and then realizing that the time changes with rush hour in the morning, and then we end up having to be a little bit late, and that's unfortunate.
I agree. Do you travel a lot, Spencer?
Yes, I do. What's
probably the city that you've been to that has the worst traffic pattern?
I'd probably have to say downtown Los Angeles. It's a tie between that or New York, but at least in New York, it's a lot easier to walk around and get from place to place. You don't feel like you have to be in a car, but in Los Angeles, everything's spread out quite a bit more.
Yeah, I went to New York City in 2015, and you're right. The traffic is neck and neck, but there's so many people on the street at one time walking. It's like you can almost get lost in their traffic with all the
Absolutely.
People.
And there seems to be a blatant disregard to jaywalking rules.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw that a lot in New York City. Me and my friend went to Wall Street, and it was like a billion people just left and right, and then you try to see somebody cut into into the crowd going either towards Wall Street or away from it. Could you imagine if we invented a traffic signal for walking traffic?
I mean, that sort of exists with the crosswalks. I just don't think people would listen to the sign. A lot of times the issue with the automated systems is you look left and right, and as a person you know it's safe, but the sign just doesn't say that it's all right for you to go. And I think that diminishes people's trust in the technology.
Yeah, because sometimes it's off. Like you'll see the crosswalk sign say walk when it's a green light. So it's like, oh, well, you just almost killed me here unless that was your intention. I've seen that a couple times.
Will rise.
Yeah.
We'll
Yes.
start with the traffic lights.
Right. Then what's going to be next? Our cars? What if our cars, just hypothetically, were programmed to the same circuit as like the traffic signal? So when it's green, our cars go, and then if it's yellow, our cars automatically slow down, and then red, we have to stop.
Well, with the smart car advancements that they're making, I would be surprised if they haven't taken into consideration pacing for addressing congestion issues. In a lot of like metropolitan areas, they time the street lights to avoid congestion, which is why when you're kind of driving straight down a block, if you time it just right and you go maybe like the speed limit or like 5 below, you'll hit green light after green light after green light. And that's because they're programmed that way. So it'd be kind of it seems like it's something that they would be really looking into for the smart cars.
See, I don't know if I would like that, though. I feel like my car would just have too much control with somebody else's hand, not so much mine.
Absolutely. And something that's like so engrossed in your safety or related to your safety, I think a lot of people would really struggle to kind of give up that degree of control.
Well, right. And then, too, with, the self-driving cars.
Absolutely.
I would be afraid of that. I know they were experimenting with the Tesla to be one of the first self-driving cars, but I'm thinking, I don't think people understand what it means when they say self-driving. That doesn't mean you can sleep if it's self-driving.
I think they're working towards that, though. I think a lot of the tests that they're running, they have a person behind the wheel that's just taking observations and notes. I think that is what they're working towards, though, is a fully autonomous car. I think it sounds interesting. I think a lot of people are apprehensive about it, but I would try one.
I don't think so. I think I'm going to avoid that. No.
I might see if I could avoid bridges and, driving around lakes the first couple of times.
Right. Or, how sometimes they have those stories where the GPS takes you right to a lake because the address wasn't right?
Absolutely.
Or maybe...
I've had one try to take me down a deer trail just recently.
Where were you going?
I was going to a family member's house, but I was approaching it from a completely different side, so I didn't know the area. And it looked like a trail that I could barely walk down without brushing my shoulders against the bush.
Or maybe the address was potentially there, and then over the last couple years it changed because the house got demolished, or they built a forest.
Yeah, the road's changing.
Scary. All right, so we're going to jump right into our topic for today. I'm going to introduce who Spencer is. So Spencer is originally from San Diego, California, and he currently lives here in Cleveland. I don't know why you decided to come from there here, but okay.
The beautiful weather.
Yeah, right. Spencer is a graduate of the University of Advanced Technology in Temple, Arizona. He is the technical director of R&I at RSM. And an interesting fact about Spencer is that he used to make chainmail armor. So how long would it take you to make just one set of armor?
I did that one time, and it was a casual project for probably about a year, about 14 months or so, doing it a few hours a week.
Now, did you sell the chainmail to people who maybe participate in the medieval fairs, or maybe they would want to have it for a play or a Halloween costume?
I kept the only shirt I ever made, but I sold a lot of smaller parts for jewelry, and I sold a lot of like swatches to like history professors to have as a prop to show.
Oh, wow. Now, are you into history at all, Spencer?
I do like history, yeah. I find it very interesting.
Okay. What's your favorite, I guess, maybe event in history or maybe topic that you enjoy?
I enjoy a lot of the medieval history. I think it's very, very fascinating to hear about the politics and the lore, and it seemed like it was a very critical time, between like the 1300s and the 1600s when a lot of precedents was kind of set that still sticks with us today. So I think that's a very interesting time of history.
Yeah, I remember reading up on the that time period. I always found looking at the pictures of their outfits very interesting. And even just some of their practices. I was like, oh, this is different. You know, see, I'm somebody who, as far as history goes, I always find different events like the Holocaust interesting, or like the Cold War and different things like that, because I like to look at patterns to see like maybe something happened before that which caused this to happen, and maybe potentially the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the greatest way to apply the knowledge gained from history, right? To not repeat the mistakes that we have made collectively as a race.
Mm-hmm. As a society, yeah. I enjoy going to different historical sites. So when I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I had the opportunity to go to the Oklahoma City Bombing Memorial. And of course, my luck kicked in. I was able to meet one of the survivors there. And she let me interview her for about 20-30 minutes. We talked. She literally told me the story like it just happened yesterday. And I said, wow, to have such a very vivid account of that day, considering I think it's been 19 years since that happened. And I was just fascinated. I also went to the Ground Zero in New York City.
I was just recently able to see that for the first time last year. I've gone to New York a few times, and I was finally able to see that. It was a beautiful memorial.
It was. Did you get to visit the museum?
No, I was just able to see the site and walk around is it the garden is the memorial with
Mm-hmm.
with the tree and the water feature.
Yeah, if you go back to New York City, definitely go to the museum. It's not super big, but it's powerful. It has all the pictures of the victims of 9/11. It also has it has some of the props that they recovered from the building. Like they had somebody's briefcase with pictures. There was like a gun welded into the cement. I mean, just a lot of interesting stuff. Very, very much so.
Absolutely. I will do that.
So our topic today is going to be on cybersecurity, how to protect yourself, especially, your personal information. So Spencer here is an expert in that area. So Spencer, kind of let's go over some basic cybersecurity tips for everyday computer usage. Tell our listeners about the importance of having a strong password.
Absolutely. So password is definitely one of those top things that users can do to protect their individual online presence. So having a strong password, something that's greater than 8 characters, something that's 10, 12, 14 characters long is absolutely a wonderful thing. That can be a little bit difficult for some folks to remember, though, because another thing that we like to suggest that people do is not share their password across multiple accounts. Because, like, let's say you share your password on site apple.com and you also have an account on banana.com and they both have the same password. Well, if there's an incident where it's leaked from apple.com, then the attackers are going to take your email address and they're going to try all the popular websites. And they can then get into all the other websites that you shared your password on that's associated with your email. And a lot of times nowadays, your email is good enough to be your username. So in order to limit that exposure, what we do recommend is that people don't share or reuse their passwords. And that can become very difficult to remember a lot of times. So we suggest using like a password manager, something like KeyPass is a free option that's a desktop application. It's available open source. Or there's online applications like LastPass, something like that. They go by a couple different names. They're called like password managers or like password vaults, something along those lines. But what those allow you to do is remember one password that gets you into the vault. And then the vault will allow you to create a 30, 40, 50 character long password, something that an attacker realistically is never going to be able to crack, but it doesn't matter to you because you don't have to remember it. You just copy and paste it out of the vault into apple.com when you want to go in and do your grocery shopping type of a thing. So that's definitely one of the suggestions that we have in regards to passwords.
Well, I mean, that's very smart. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm guilty of it. Probably other people who are listening are, that we use one password for 8 different accounts with the same email. And
absolutely. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well. I just try to not do it for anything that would impact me personally. So anything that would just my threat profile is different than anybody else's. You know, working at the company that I do and having access to the information that I do. Some people might describe me as paranoid, but probably with good reason. But I mean, I don't share passwords across any accounts that would allow someone to impersonate me or have any sort of financial impact. So any kind of like e-commerce or like my credit card store, that type of a thing.
Yeah. You, especially when it's very personal, such as, like you said, credit card, medical, bank statements, you know, all that stuff.
Absolutely. I would also group social media into that too. You know, a lot of people would be pretty upset if somebody impersonated them and started to send, you know, inflammatory remarks to their peers or their colleagues or their coworkers. I mean, in today's age, I mean, if you posted the wrong thing to social media, whether it was you or not, if it was on your account, that could have implications on your job, all those kinds of things. So I would definitely group social media accounts in there as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't consider that because people just go on social media, they log in, they post whatever, and if they don't have a strong password to secure their account, then anybody can hack in and just post at their leisure.
Absolutely.
So while we're on this, go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, sorry, I was going to mention something else about passwords. So a lot of times when you're signing up for accounts, they'll ask you for like password reset questions. And your comment about social media reminded me that a lot of times these password reset questions are something like, where did you go to high school? What was the first street you grew up on? It's information that people generally share on social media. So a lot of times when an attacker wants to get into a specific user's account, they'll try to reset their password and they'll try to guess the answers to these questions. So what we suggest is that when you're setting these password reset questions, if you can, don't necessarily include like the accurate information. This becomes very difficult to remember, but if you can pull it off, it's a very good technique. Basically, if they ask you, you know, what high school did you go to? Answer what middle school or college you went to. If they ask, you know, who is your favorite historical figure? Name your favorite actor. Do like something else. The other thing is that if somebody asks you like in personal conversation and you let it slip the real answer, then like you're not giving up the information that could leak your account details.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that as far as linking social media to, you know, hackers having literally easy access to your information. I mean, because we all have different parts of ourselves listed on social media, whether it's our high school, our job, our birthday. I mean, it's literally right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the people are looking. And
Yeah.
finally, like the last thing that you can really do is something in addition to passwords that a lot of sites are starting to allow nowadays are multi-factor or like two-factor authentication. You see this a lot of times on like banks and things like that, where they'll send you like an SMS code to your phone to type that in order to log into your account. Some of the social media profiles are starting to do it as well, along with some of like the higher end gaming accounts, even because those are quite valuable. And so having that additional layer of authentication means that even if someone did get your username and your password, they would also have to have like your phone or access to your email in order to get in. So that's a very effective means to defend your account as well.
Yeah, I have that at my job. For certain logins, we have the multi-factor authentication where we enter in our username, password, and then, they can send the multi-factor password or, number to your email or through a phone call. So I have that and I appreciate it a lot. Now, Spencer, since
Yeah.
we're still on the topic of passwords, some people try to shortcut with their passwords and use just, for example, summer 0601 or Amazon 101. What's an example of a good, strong password?
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. um, it's a passphrase. And what we would also suggest is that you swap out some letters in that, like the I in the word quick, if you use what's called leak case and you translated that into like an exclamation point or something. Or if you said, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog 4 bones, and you did like the number 4. So that way, in addition to words and a nice little phrase, you're including punctuation and numbers. But that's the crux of the idea behind like a passphrase instead. I can also say that all of the examples that you gave, the issue with those and the reason why they're weak, as you mentioned, is that they're usually one word and people will capitalize the first letter and they'll put the numbers at the end. It's a very common pattern, but we can guess that when we're like trying to emulate what attackers do. And so if you put the number at the beginning or the capital letter at the end, if you try to just stay away from that pattern, you'll be just a step above everybody else, basically.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of putting either a 2 at the beginning or like using Amazon 101 exclamation mark type of thing. Just
What we see very often when we're looking into assessing corporate environments is that the corporations are requiring that users change their password every 90 days, right? So what we see is that people will use the season with a capital letter followed by the year. So we just came off a season where summer 19 would have been a very common password. Now we're kind of in a gray area because people tend to not use fall, but then we'll get into winter 19 and winter 20. And that is what folks do. And so if anyone is listening and that's your password, I guessed it, and you should consider changing it.
I hear that. Change it now. Summer 19, winter 19. Now, Spencer, what are, I guess, some passwords that outside of Amazon 101 or summer 19, winter 19 that people should just steer from? Not, maybe months of the year or.
We don't see month of the year too much. We see any words with the word password in it, any word with the company in it. So like you had mentioned Amazon, if that's for your Amazon account, probably not so great. But if that's also like the company that you work for, definitely not so great. The other thing would be local sports teams, especially if it's for your job and we know where it's based out of. Then local sports teams would be something else to steer away from. But really, anything, if you added a second, third, or fourth word into it, even just one more word, really makes it a lot harder for somebody to guess.
So that means don't use Cleveland Browns, don't use Cleveland Cavaliers.
Go Buckeyes.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that maybe the first example you use with the fox, the brown fox looked for a bone, the number 4 or anything like that to make it more complex. So,
Yeah, even something like Hot Summer or Summer Love would be a lot better than just Summer 19.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Since we're still on the topic of, passwords, a lot of people go to, whether it's McDonald's, Starbucks, Panera, and they use their Wi-Fi because it's, public, and you just have to turn on your device and accept their disclaimer. Spencer, kind of talk about the pros and cons of using public Wi-Fi.
Okay. So when you're using public Wi-Fi, the information can sometimes be viewed by others that are on the network. It would kind of be the same idea as if you're like in like a hotel or something like that, where like the hotel in that example or McDonald's in your first example would potentially have access to see what you're doing. Now, when you do browse websites and you're connecting to your email and things like that, most of those sites are going to be encrypted. They're going to be HTTPS, and they're going to have that little lock icon in the top of the browser that we're all taught to look for. So if you're using the public Wi-Fi or whatever to go to your bank and you need to like make a withdrawal or something like that. First of all, I mean that's probably getting into a gray area in terms of security. Chances are you'll be fine, but what you would want to make sure is that you are really going to your bank, that you typed it in correctly, that the lock icon is there, and that means that the connection between you and the bank is encrypted, and McDonald's, the hotel, the person sitting next to you is not able to see what you're saying to the bank and what the bank is saying to you. However, what they are able to do is see that you are talking to the bank. They know that you're talking to the bank, but they don't know what's being said at all. So the point here is a little bit more privacy versus data security. So we may not think that, if I connect to my bank, that that's sensitive information, but perhaps if you were a different person and you were a journalist in another country and you were going to be reporting on questionable events that you have seen, that might be something that you would care about. And so that's a different threat profile. And so if you're worried about people knowing who you're communicating with, in that example, your bank or whoever you are reporting your information to as a journalist, then I would definitely steer clear away from any of those like public types of connections. But if you're just an average user, then chances are you'll be okay. I mean, with security, there's no like you'll absolutely be okay or no, you're not. It's not quite that simple. It's all different levels of risk that you're able to accept. So what I would also say is if that's something that you're concerned about, that you can increase your security by using something like a VPN, which would encrypt all of your communications to a trusted provider like a VPN. And it's kind of like you're taking the security that you would have from your house, but with you anywhere. So whether you're at McDonald's or in your hotel room, when you connect to your VPN, you have a lot of the same similar security characteristics as if you were at your home.
Yeah, excellent. Just for our listeners, Spencer, can you kind of go into what exactly a VPN is?
Absolutely. So a VPN is a virtual private network. So there are providers out there that do charge for it. It is a commercial service. I believe you can get them discounted for maybe like $25, $30 a year. It's not terribly cost prohibitive. But what it does is it encrypts all of your communication to the VPN provider. So going back to my example of being at McDonald's and someone being able to know that you're talking to the bank but not being able to know what's said, if at the same time you were banking, you were also on Twitter and Facebook, the person would know that you were talking to the bank, Twitter, and Facebook, but they wouldn't know what was being said throughout any of those conversations. If you were using a VPN, however, your Twitter, Facebook, and bank conversations would be going over the VPN and have an additional layer of encryption, and the person that's trying to spy on you wouldn't even know that you were talking to the bank, Twitter, or Facebook. All they would know is that you're talking to your VPN provider. On the flip side, Twitter, Facebook, or the bank are all probably not, they're not going to know where you're coming from because they're only going to see the VPN provider as having all of your traffic. So at this point, you're placing your trust in the VPN as a single source to be able to monitor in on your conversations, but you're limiting it to only that one party.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good thing. It kind of gives you that added security, even though you're in, a public domain.
Absolutely. It increases your security, but it also greatly increases your privacy.
Spencer, kind of for our listeners, the term hacker kind of is out there and people may not really understand what a hacker can do, what a hacker is. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure. We hear a lot of different definitions of the term hacker. I mean, there's not really like a clearly defined set, but what's generally accepted is someone that is utilizing a computer and they're doing things with it that they're not necessarily supposed to be able to do. That could be as simple as adding features to software that weren't intended to be there, to breaking into accounts to steal information. So it's really somebody that has the mindset and the curiosity to see the boundaries that they can push on a system and how they can manipulate it towards a goal that they have.
So generally, Spencer, what information do hackers kind of look for?
Well, it depends. I mean, there's a lot of hobbyists out there that are just sort of curious, and then you see they may be going after just whatever interests them. It could be information about aliens, or it could be information about the latest video games that are going to come out before it's released. Then you have others that are politically motivated. There's been a term coined for that fairly recently called hacktivism or hacktivists. That have a politically motivated agenda. They may try to leak information about candidates or deface websites that are promoting beliefs that aren't aligned with theirs. And then you have criminal organizations that are motivated strictly by profits, that are just trying to get money or things that they can sell for money.
Yeah, and don't some of them kind of, when you click on maybe a website, ransomware pops up on your computer and they want to charge you to get access to your stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, a lot of people generally just think about that third category of the criminal organizations, and ransomware is definitely something that has increased lately. What the criminals have realized is that they can create a piece of ransomware and they can install it on a large number of systems, and it's highly profitable, and it's not a lot of work on their end. I mean, the criminals are just like regular people. Why would you work more for less money? They're all about trying to maximize their benefits, and so ransomware has allowed them to do that.
Now, Spencer, hackers, kind of like you said, there's different types, from the criminals, the hacktivists, and, people who just do it out of hobby. How hard is it for, them to be caught with what they're doing?
Generally, it's pretty difficult. Attribution is something that a lot of people have struggled with. I mean, even with the DNC hack, it's been very, very difficult to prove definitively where the attackers came from. There's been a lot of reports, but it took a very long time to get to that point, and that was very high profile. There's a lot of other events that, kind of fly under the radar because it's very difficult to attribute where these attacks are coming from. Unfortunately, local law enforcement isn't really equipped to deal with those types of events. So when local businesses, individual people have these types of issues and they try to go to local law enforcement, they're not well equipped and they don't have the means or resources to really investigate the issues and find where the attackers are coming from. A lot of private organizations, like large companies, have internal teams, or they'll outsource the work to consulting firms to do incident response and try to identify, where the attacker came from, what they did, what were their motivations, are they gone, and oftentimes to pursue legal action. So generally, it's very difficult to find this information. It does happen fairly frequently, and you do hear about hackers being put on trial and extradited and jailed, but generally it can be rather difficult.
I mean, for somebody who does get caught, hacking into whether it's a small business or kind of like a privately owned, I wonder how much time do they generally get?
Oh, in terms of jail time, I'm not entirely sure. I know the CFAA Act can be pretty strict in terms of what you have done. I think they take into consideration, the damage that you did. Did you do it with malicious intent? Was it your first incident? They take a lot of those types of things into consideration. If you're a criminal organization that's been operating for years strictly for profit, I'm pretty sure they're going to be very hard on you and you're going to get quite a few years. And I think that's what happened with the ringleader Cebu quite a few years ago. But,
Wow.
I mean, for like kids that just kind of push the boundaries a little bit too far and are just curious and aren't trying to get in for money, I don't really think they're going to be sending them to federal prison. I can't say for certain, no, I'm not a lawyer.
Right. What about all these different data breaches that have happened? The one was it TurboTax or one of those that happened within the last couple months? I mean, how do those happen?
Too many to count.
I mean, I wondered, all these different lawsuits that have occurred and they kind of have to offer people some type of incentive because their information has been stolen.
Absolutely.
And, when those things happen, I mean, is there anything that can be done about that? For example, I think the Hilton Hotel may have had something like that happen a couple years ago. So a lot of people weren't, I don't think, staying there because their credit card information was seized, all that stuff.
So private users, their best bet is to limit their exposed data to these companies. It's simple. It's something as simple as when you're filling out a form and they want to know your social security number and your birthday and your address and your mother's maiden name, leave it blank. I mean, they might not actually need that information. Like if you're applying for a job or if you're applying for some kind of coverage or something along those lines, simply don't provide them that information so it can't be leaked. A lot of times they ask for it, but if you explain that you're not comfortable giving them that information, they still want your business. So they may be flexible with it. So it's a question about simply asking about that. Otherwise, on like a lot of like online sites, a lot of sites will allow you to not store your credit card with them, and you end up having to check out as a guest each time. But that's a little bit better, especially around holidays. I don't know about everybody else, but there's a couple of companies that I only buy things from in like November and December because I'm getting gifts for my family. I can deal with putting in my information one time a year, so I don't have my credit card information stored with them because I'm not going to name them, but they don't really seem like the most reputable of companies for me. You kind of just get that feeling in your gut. Like I know this is not like a multi-million-dollar company, so I'm not sure how they're protecting my information, so I'm not going to have them store it. Additionally, if you could just use something like PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay, one of those organizations where like they store your financial information and then they send it to the other companies, that can be very beneficial as well, because then when the company in question is breached, they don't have your financial information. It's safe with PayPal, Google, Apple, something along those lines.
Yeah, I use PayPal a lot, especially when I'm buying stuff from maybe eBay or any other site. It does come in handy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Since we're kind of on the lines of credit card information and putting that on, certain websites and they save them, what are kind of the pros and cons of saving your credit card or debit card information on the website?
Well, the pro is definitely going to be convenience. I think that's just about the only pro that I can really think about, whether that's for auto pay or, not having to log in to order the pizza the next week. I may or may not be guilty of that, but it's all about convenience, which is kind of one of those things with security that a lot of times security plays against convenience. You can be the most secure person in the world, but you're going to live a tough life without a lot of modern conveniences that, would increase your exposure. So it's all about asking yourself, what level of risk are you willing to accept? And so, again, just for me personally, some of those sites that I just don't think are quite as reputable, I'm not going to store my information with them, but I will for a lot of the larger, companies I know are multi-million dollars and can invest in a security budget and try to keep my information safe. As an alternative to storing your credit card number with those other companies or even giving it to them once, a lot of larger banks will allow you to use like a temporary, like a loaner card. I forget the exact term, but they'll basically give you like a virtual credit card that's tied to your real one that has a limit that you can set. So let's say you want to spend $500 on a website that you're pretty sure has no security at all this Christmas, and you don't want to use your real credit card. You can go into your bank, say, I'm going to spend $500, and they'll give you a virtual credit card number that can run the one transaction, but then after that, it's been maxed out against the $500 limit that you set. When it comes time to, reconcile and it's on your bill and everything, it looks like it was just on your regular card. But the company that you spent the money with never got your real card number. So if they're compromised, you're safe.
Wow, I never knew that. That probably will come in handy, especially for this upcoming holiday season where they're predicting more people are going to shop online.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would suggest that you talk to your bank where you have your credit card and ask them if they have a program like that. To my knowledge, there's not a specific name for it, but I know a lot of companies do offer that. It's in their best interest as well, because if your credit card is compromised, the bank has to spend a lot of money canceling it. They may have lost funds because the attacker was buying things. So they want to help you protect it. So that's one of the services that they'll offer to you to work with you to help you save and secure your information.
Thank you again, Spencer, for coming on the show and educating our listeners on the importance of protecting yourself, especially during this holiday season.
Happy to help.
So since we're kind of on the topic of virtual credit cards and debit card information, what are some guidelines for maybe beginners who are going to shop online for the first time this holiday season?
Sure. So when shopping online, you definitely want to make sure that you're using the correct version of the site. That may seem intuitive, but if you get a link sent to you in an email saying, 90% off this Black Friday at, whatever website it is that you want to shop at, maybe just try to double check to make sure that everything looks correct, that the email was sent from the company they claim to be, that the link is going to the proper one. And if anything looks off on the website, just absolutely don't deal with it at all. Other than that, using the virtual credit cards, and I would highly recommend, checking your credit card statements, maybe with a little bit more scrutiny for the months following the holiday season, trying to look for any kind of suspicious activity or anything along those lines. Be very important.
When you said make sure that the website is the actual legit website, we know that sometimes we get emails that says, for example, Amazon survey shopper or something, and it will have a link to whatever survey, and after you take it, you win $500. So, probably our listeners should maybe open the email, but also maybe just scroll over to the actual link, and instead of clicking on it, won't it show the actual website?
Yes, if you hover over the link, it'll show you the URL. And if it claims to be from Amazon, what you want to make sure is that it is from Amazon.com. It's not from Amazon or Amazon with an M, something similar. That would be a problem. That would definitely be a problem. The other thing is that you want to make sure that it's from Amazon.com/, and it's not Amazon.com.data.com/. That's the other key, is that we're seeing, criminals are using the Amazon.com, but that's not the only part of that URL. And the way that the computer works is that it needs to be Amazon.com and then /, not something else.
Right, absolutely. Spencer.
The exact same thing with Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, Google. You always want to make sure it's google.com/.
I have to keep that in mind because I never really paid attention to the / at the end of the URL.
Not at the end of the URL, just at the end of where you think you're going, because then there's all the gibberish at the end.
Right.
But you want to make sure the Amazon.com ends in a /, not an Amazon.com .
Absolutely. Spencer, when we go on websites such as Amazon or eBay, aren't they supposed to have kind of like an SSL on the website that shows you that it's legit?
Yes, absolutely. And that was what I was referring to with that lock. So the SSL websites will be the ones that begin with HTTPS. Those will be the encrypted ones. And so that means that, you're able to communicate with them, and that someone's not going to be able to snoop in on what you're saying to those parties or what they're saying to you. Someone will know that you're talking to them, but they won't know what's being said. So you want to make sure that the lock is good, and modern browsers will throw an error. It'll show a warning message that you'll definitely know isn't the page that you're supposed to be looking for, if there's something wrong with the encryption. And that would definitely be a warning sign that you should not deal with the website.
Yeah, that definitely poses a red flag. So should people potentially use a different email address when they're shopping online?
You could. That would make it more difficult that, like, if the account were compromised, you'd kind of be limiting that. If you used a password vault, though, I'm not really sure it would provide much more protection, because you would still not be sharing credentials across them. If you want to just avoid getting spam, you absolutely could use a separate email, so you just don't want to be getting all those messages, or have your email link leaked. There's a few services online that, if you need a temporary email address, that they'll provide one to you for, say, 10 minutes or an hour, and you can give them this email, and they'll, you can sign up for your account or whatnot, but you'll never get anything in your real inbox. So if you think that they are going to spam you, you can use one of those services.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. I mean, because you figure around the holiday season, Amazon and eBay and some of those other websites are trying to get you to buy more and more and more. So they're going to send you email after email like, we have 40% off jeans today, or we have $5 flip-flops. So instead of having your regular email address flooded, maybe that would be a definite idea or option for people.
I would be very careful about the ones that you do spend money with, because they will also have to send you alerts of, like, payment card was declined, or, your item was shipped or not. But if it's an account that you're not that you don't expect to be receiving, like shipping notifications from, or it's a website that you're not buying anything from, like maybe you're just signing up to get a coupon, I would definitely consider using one of those temporary emails.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Spencer, we're about to wrap up here. Before I let you go, kind of what advice can you leave with our listeners today, whether it's, staying safe over the holiday season while shopping online, or just everyday basic computer usage?
The only major tip that we didn't really hit on at all is just keeping your devices up to date. All the software that you're running. It's very important that everything is running the latest software. A lot of people get worried that updates are going to break something, but what's more likely is that the updates are going to make you more secure because they're fixing issues that may have been identified in whatever it is, whether that's your phone or that's your laptop. It's always important to update everything that you're running.
Absolutely. I think we're all kind of guilty of resisting the updates because we may not like the new interface, or maybe they took away a feature that we had that we really enjoyed, and now you can't find it.
Absolutely. Or they always come at the exact wrong time. You only turned it on because you needed to use it for like 5 minutes, and it wants to take 2 hours to download the updates, right? We've all been there, but it is an important process.
Yeah, if you want to keep your device long-term running, functioning properly, yes, I agree. Well, thank you again, Spencer, for coming on here and sharing with our listeners, the importance of, just basic security, protection, whether it's just a password or using kind of an alternative way to shop online or, with the virtual credit card. All right. Well, that concludes another episode here on Groove with Portia. Definitely look into those security tips that Spencer recommended. Stay safe this holiday season. Thanks again.